The following program is brought to you by the generous support of the following: Dr. Marietta Castle, the Jewish Federation of the Quad Cities, Jean and Karen Leibovitz, the Martin and Barbara Rich Foundation, Riverboat Development Authority, the Roush Family Foundation II, and Lanita Walden.
The Nazi persecution, genocide, and ethnic cleansing of the Jewish people did not begin on a specific date in history. Though the appointment of Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany on January 30th, 1933, is considered by many as the start. In the months that followed Hitler's appointment, persecution of the Jews, which was intended to encourage Jewish immigration from Germany to other countries, grew. Ultimately, the oppression of the Jews expanded to spontaneous murders, planned massacres of entire Jewish communities, and ultimately to the establishment of the final solution: the machinery to efficiently slaughter an entire people. As early as March of 1933, the Dachau concentration camp opened near Munich, and between July and September, Nazis passed laws to strip Jewish immigrants from Poland of their German citizenship, passed a law allowing the hereditary health court to force sterilization, prohibited Jews from owning land, and boycotted their shops and businesses. Day by day, the persecution spread to other countries, aided by the inaction of government.
Gentlemen, I must ask you to rid yourself of all feeling of pity. We must annihilate the Jews wherever we find them and wherever it is possible, in order to maintain the structure of the Reich as a whole.
Some may have misconceptions that it's just about history and telling a terrible story from World War II, whereas it really isn't. What it really is history, but what can we learn from history? Because the lessons that you learn from the Holocaust are very apropos today, and it's something that we need to instill, especially in our children and the general public, on what's happening in the world today and how does this relate back to the Holocaust. The lessons that we learned from the Holocaust really relate to a lot of things at a day-to-day basis as well as worldwide.
Teaching the lessons of the Holocaust became an Illinois law and went into effect January 1st, 1990. In part, it states, "Every public elementary school and high school shall include in its curriculum a unit of instruction studying the events of the Nazi atrocities of 1933 to 1945. This period in world history is known as the Holocaust, during which 6 million Jews and millions of non-Jews were exterminated." The Illinois law was championed by Erna Ganz, a Holocaust survivor and at that time president of the Holocaust Memorial Foundation of Illinois. After a rash of vandalism against synagogues and Jewish businesses, Ganz and other survivors worked to pass the law, making Illinois the first state in the nation to require Holocaust education in all public elementary and high schools. In 2005, the law was expanded to include the study of other modern genocides. The lesson? When a society legalizes discrimination of any kind, national, ethnic, racial, or religious, hatred can lead to unimaginable consequences. For one student, Jeff Leibovitz, a look at his own family history provided the lessons learned during the Russian oppression of the Jewish community.
My mom and dad lived in Silvis, and they were very close to Jeff because he was the first grandson, the oldest grandson.
And he was named after Zeta.
Yeah, and he was named, in the Jewish religion, there's no juniors, so they believe in reincarnation. So you normally name your kids after somebody that's passed away. And so Jeff was named after my grandfather. The young lady you seen there, she came from Russia.
Leica.
Her name was Leica, and her parents was killed in the Russian Holocaust. And my relation, my grandfather family was in England. And the synagogue, the way I understand this now, the synagogue, whatever, put together to get some kids over here and adopt them. And the way I understand it, that he adopted her at that time, and then our family moved from England to Canada.
They just dropped him off. I guess they just dropped him off on the pier, and you went up and said, "I'll take this one," or "I'll take that one."
Wasn't much to it, I guess.
Yeah,
Just take
and
somebody.
they took Lincoln.
Jeff related to the Holocaust because of his family being Jewish, and he related to what might have happened, what could have happened, and what he heard about had happened to relatives. So I know that he would have been surprised, but he would have been very, very pleased. And he'd be out there telling everybody. He had so many friends and so many people that he interacted with, and he would probably be our model teacher for teaching about the Holocaust. I supervised him in field work. So Jeff was one of those students that you saw repeatedly. Not only did he take courses from me, he frequently came into my office because he was the student who had questions after we had our classes. So he was one of those who you could tell immediately was very passionate about becoming the very best teacher he could become. He was aware of that mandate, brought it to my attention, and that's why he brought up the idea I need to be teaching about the Holocaust, helping my cooperating teacher with that, but I can't find resources. Can you help me? I remember in particular him trying to find particular materials, and that's where, in terms of Holocaust education, that's where his interest in Holocaust education came out, because he asked very specifically, where are some materials that I can get where are some resources I can get my hands on to help the students learn about the Holocaust, because they were doing a small unit of instruction and he wanted to know where were some resources. And of course he was teaching at the 6th grade level, 5th, 6th grade level. It was a split class. And I remember thinking, I don't think I've had a student ask me that. Let me see what I can find. And I began contacting some individuals, looking around in the libraries, and realizing that there were materials out there, but it was more for the high school, more for adults. There wasn't a great deal at the middle school and upper elementary level. And Jeff and I began a conversation about that. How could we change that?
He was not the world's greatest student, He was not. But he worked hard and whatever, but he was going to be a good teacher.
I think because he really had the love for it after he had gotten into it.
He and I sold Christmas trees, and there was a picture of him.
Hanukkah bushes, maybe.
Yeah, I call them Hanukkah bushes. But there was a picture of him sitting out in the trees studying his college material, sitting in the Christmas trees, and it was in the dispatch there that he was sitting in the trees.
I remember the first day I walked into this classroom at Willard. I was extremely eager to learn all I could about every 5th and 6th grader in Miss Schaefer's class. The wonderful thing that I discovered on that first day was that these students also want to learn all they could about me.
Well, he was student teaching, and I can't remember the exact, 94, 92. They made it a law that they had to teach the Holocaust. And that's what started him, and I knew that. Okay, so he was trying to find material about the Holocaust, and nobody had it in any library. And kind of raised a lot of hell up there why they don't, and I think that's what got the library going after he passed.
When Jeff was doing his student teaching, I'm sure he put his all into it. And I often think sometimes maybe he didn't pay as much attention to his health as he should have, because I think there probably were some warning signs that he might have been having some heart problems. But regardless, he was teaching at 6th grade at Garfield, and I know that he began to have some chest pains, and it was toward the end of his student teaching. As a matter of fact, it was in April, and I know that student teaching ended shortly after that. So he, I know, alerted finally his principal or the teacher there at the school, and I believe an ambulance was called, and he was taken to the hospital where he passed away that evening.
Dr. Castle said that
She was the one that
yes,
contacted
there was a
us.
group of people that got together the day he passed,
spirit.
and you know, they were having their bad times, and they were trying to come up with something that they could do for memorial.
I remember at that time already people were talking about memorials for him. What would a suitable memorial be? And I can't say that immediately the idea came to me, but I told them, and I thought myself, we need to be running this through our mind, thinking about things that remind us of Jeff, but also something, because he wanted to teach. He had such a passion for teaching, and it was something that he came to later in his 30s. He wanted to teach, and we said, let's think of something that would help his mission of teaching go on. Now, I envisioned a very small collection, and I wasn't aware of how much money was coming in as a memorial to Jeff. And when I talked to the students, all of them jumped on it, said, this is a great idea. This, too, has come to us as a perfect idea, a library collection of literature about the Holocaust. So within a week, probably, the idea had formed. By the end of fall, I think we had, of 1994, we had more funds, almost $15,000. That again surprised me, but I thought, oh, more books, more literature, more videos at that time. Now we have CDs and DVDs, but that also could help us. So that's how the collection began. It began in the heart of the students who knew Jeff, the university students who knew Jeff. It started with an idea from our memories of Jeff and what was significant to him, and we wanted very much for his mission to teach to go on. Even though he was no longer here, we knew that that passion was there, and there could still be an impact on students through this collection. We started in 1994 with materials on a shelf. We started, as a matter of fact, I put together a steering committee to help me. In other words, I didn't want to do this by myself. I knew that I couldn't. I needed to also brush up on my own knowledge. So we went to, 3 of us from the committee went to the U.S. Holocaust Museum in D.C. We took a trip there, but I also notified them ahead of time saying, are there materials that you can give us or point us toward that we can purchase so that our collection is a quality collection.
It's unusual for a library, a branch library of this size, to have a special collection in the first place. So I was just excited about it when I first heard about it. And in addition to browsing and pulling out individual titles, we have some self-contained curriculum units that are packed in cases in metal trunks that are more focused. The collection itself is broadly about the Holocaust, but the curriculum units, the cases are more focused. For example, the most recent one that we've completed is a case that's focused on rescuers and resistors in the Holocaust. So a teacher can come in, check out that case of books and materials and posters and media, all the things that are available in it. And it's got a curriculum written already for them to use. They can take that trunk and take it to their class, and they've got this self-contained unit where they can just set up and go to town right away.
We're seeing many young teachers. As a matter of fact, it's been a wonderful process to watch some of the teachers and librarians who have been working in our Holocaust efforts, mentoring younger librarians and younger teachers, so that as new people come in to the profession, at whatever level, I look at Tom Finley, you know, someday we all retire, we all leave and pursue our own interests, but this particular topic will go on. I honestly think the collection and all the pieces around it, workshops, curriculum materials, the cases and so on, those are going to become more important as our survivors pass away.
Well, some kids have said, even some foreign exchange students have said, we never knew about this. We never learned about this in our country. And this is something we're going to bring back to our country and hopefully can teach others. And locally here, students, I've seen students get involved in projects in terms of anti-bullying and learning more about the Holocaust and doing educational projects, writing essays, doing exhibits that go national based upon their desire to learn more about the Holocaust and to spread the message that and the lessons learned. What are we trying to instill on our next generation? So I see I'm very, very tremendously surprised and very appreciative of the number of people, especially teachers, who want to learn about the Holocaust and want to instill these in our kids. It's amazing in our small community here on how many teachers do want to teach the Holocaust and what the students get out of it.
I didn't know much. I just knew that there were people called Nazis that killed Jewish people. It's pretty emotional. I think it's sad and it makes me angry that people like the Nazis can just discriminate or kill people for being who they are, because I've always been told to be who I am and be proud of it. So when Jewish people were hated on or hated for being who they were, I think that's not right. It's horrible, honestly.
I've been told there are some things happening in other countries, kind of genocide, but not as big as the Holocaust.
I've been teaching the Holocaust it will be 5 years then, since I started here. I came to know about the trunks. One of my former colleagues, she retired last year, Linda Getz, is actually on the committee who puts together the trunks. And so she was working on the committee and we were able to get them. And so that's how we came to know about it. And she had mentioned that they're putting together a resistance trunk now. And so we're hoping to be able to utilize that when it comes out. It was really exciting because being part of a school district, we have various units and we don't have all the materials we need for those units. And the Holocaust is one where there's so much that can be taught and there's so much that students can learn that we just can't get resources for everything. So it was great opening one of the trunks. There are 6 different lit group books that we can use, and there are 30 copies of 10,000 Children, which is about the Kindertransport. And I had never even heard of Kindertransport as an educator until I opened the trunks. And so I even had some new learning experiences with just topics that were in there. So we really like using them for the resources just because we can't get them here through the school. The other trunk has individual resources, so quite a few individual titles that kids can use when they're researching, or we can pull out, there are some children's stories that we can pull out and have kids work with, or even read them whole class and talk through what those books are about. So we really have to have these in order to have the unit that we have.
Me and my dad watched a movie once called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and I liked the movie, so I started reading about the books. People should know about how it happened and how many people died, because they didn't just die for no reason. I didn't know much about the people that actually helped the Jews. I didn't know very many people helped them, so that was new.
It's interesting because some kids come into 8th grade with quite a vast knowledge of the Holocaust. Some have been to some of the camps. One girl had just been to the Anne Frank house, and so some kids know a lot. Other kids have never heard of it, or they only know really basic information. So I really enjoy this because I can see their learning, and oftentimes they don't know how to accept what happened right away. And so trying to help them work through those emotions, and then also learning about specific people who were a part of the Holocaust, and specifically people who resisted. I think a lot of the times they learn about the Holocaust and these are the facts, and they don't really get that deeper understanding of here are people who lived through it, here are people who survived, here are people who resisted, and so they can get that deeper learning.
I just thought it was kind of sad because it was just so many Jews, like 6 million, and then 5 million non-Jews, and I just wish there was something done about it, but there wasn't, so.
Though the teaching of the Holocaust is mandated in Illinois, it is the passion of teachers like Jeff who are passing on the unforgettable lessons of this not-so-distant time in the history of the world.
I think it's just a fantastic resource, and it's really kind of a unique resource to our community. And my hope is that more teachers and more students know about it and use it effectively. And it's always the most difficult thing is to get the word out, and we try, and we have to keep trying. It's a never-ending quest to make sure people know all that it entails here and what you can get out of it. So it's a tremendous resource for our community.
1,200 civilians walked from the neighboring city of Weimar to begin a forced tour of the camp. There are many smiling faces, and according to observers, at first the Germans act as though this were something being staged for their benefit. One of the first things that the German civilians see as they reach the interior of the camp is the parchment display. On a table for all to gaze upon is a lampshade made of human skin, made at the request of an SS officer's wife. The camera records the changes in facial expressions as the Weimar citizens leave the parchment display. Other evidences of horror, brutality, and human indecency are shown, and these people are compelled to see what their own government had perpetrated.
We see ourselves as part of a national, international effort to maintain the stories about the Holocaust. But I realize that it may not always be a physical collection. When I look at the digital resources, the archives, the things that are on the internet, who knows where we'll find a way to reach children, future generations. But we don't want the story to die. We don't want the story just as Jeff may no longer be here, we want the story to go on.
In a Lied der Vorweit, in a Stiebel an a Zeit, durch a Fenster nicht ein Geräusch, gucken die Kinderlach heraus, Inga mit fliege Köpf, Mäiderlach mit blonde Zäpf, und zusammen dort mit sich, gucken Augen schwarze Zweig, Augen schwarze voll mit Tränen, und an Esel klein, Lippe lacht zum Kuschen noch, stark gelockte schwarze Haar, die Mama hat ihm da gebracht, ein gewickelt spät bei Nacht, gekuscht im Star gewöhnt geklagt, und Stillerheit zu ihm gesagt, und Heinz, mein Kind, ist da dein Ort, Gedenk dein Mannes letzten Wort, ihr behalt dir dort der Fahrt.
The preceding program was brought to you by the generous support of the following: Dr. Marietta Castle, the Jewish Federation of the Quad Cities, Gene and Karen Leibovitz, the Martin and Barbara Rich Foundation, Riverboat Development Authority, the Roush Family Foundation, 2, and Lanita Walden.